Sahano bhunaktu sahaviryam karvavahe tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The Katha Upanishad 2, 3, 6. Book 2, Chapter 3 and verse 6. Having known the dissimilarity of the senses that originate separately, as also their rising and setting, the intelligent person does not grieve. This is a kind of a constant refrain of this Upanishad. Matva dhiro na sochati. The intelligent person does not grieve. Today we will be speaking about the levels of existence. So the first level of existence, as I say, the sensory level. And then the next verse will take the senses, and higher than the senses, the mind, and higher than the mind is the intellect, and higher than the intellect is the great soul, and higher than the great soul is that great unmanifested state of existence, and higher than that is that supreme soul. But here we have is that supreme soul. Here it's a kind of a preamble for these levels of existence. Indriyanam pritak bhavam udayastamayochaya pritak utpadyamananam matva dhiro na sochati. That has to be kind of understood. That originates separately as also their rising and setting. The intelligent person does not grieve because the subject matter is the supreme self. So these rishis, these sages, they assume that you know what the senses are. When they said they are dissimilar, dissimilar to what? To the self, the supreme self. So here we have you know what? We have these sensory systems. So here you say these sensory organs are dissimilar to the self. Obviously, because this is mortal, that is immortal. This is limited, that is unlimited. This is impure, that is pure. There is no kind of similarity at all between this order of existence, level of existence, and that level of existence. However, there is a kind of a vague similarity because they operate. Now, to make us understand this, the whole process of, you can say, creation of the senses is taken up in the sense of these senses that we have, the sensory system, and then we have the motor system, the motor organs, and then we have the life force. This whole universe, nature, if you can say, this nature is composed of what is called the three qualities, the three gunas: sattva, rajas, and tamas. This was the, you can say, the beginning of philosophy by the Sankhyas, the Sankhya philosophers, and Vedanta adopted some aspects of it because it clarifies a lot of concepts about nature. Now, the grossest aspect of nature, that's a uh, what do you call tamas aspect, goes to create this gross world. The middling aspect, the rajas, that which has activity, goes to create the sense, the organs of action, as well as the pranas. Okay, because it's movement. Okay? And we have these sense organs because they are so fine. They are made from the sattva aspect of nature. So we have the sattva aspect, the sensory system, the rajas aspect, the motor organs and the pranas, and the tamas aspect, which is the gross. Now, in our body itself, it's being explained that there are levels of, of from the gross to the subtle, because the body is gross extremely. It's perceptible, it is tangible, and then we have something, it is tangible but more on a different level, the life force, the vital force called pranas, as well as the organs of action. And then it becomes even more subtle. Our bodies still have that subtle, which goes to take the five, you can say, sensory organs. Now, each in the old days, ancient days, we never had a periodic table. They said that all matter in whatever elements are there in the periodic table are derived from one material called space, Akash. And from there, as it starts evolving, it becomes air. And then it becomes grosser, it becomes fire or light. And it becomes grosser, it becomes water. And it becomes even grosser, it becomes the earth. So we have already a level of this kind of grossness and fineness here. These senses are designed to apprehend this nature, obviously. Otherwise, we had this nature here created, but we never had a sensory system to cognize it. What good will your body be if it is so? So these elements, and things like it corresponds with today's findings that our visual system, our optic nerves and our eyes were designed by us through a long process of evolution so that we could apprehend the environment, the world outside. And it went on getting finer and finer. If we were living in water, we would have a different set of visual apparatus. And if you were living in the skies most of the time, like the birds, they would have had a different. So here we have an external nature influencing the inner development. So that there's a kind of a evolution, co-evolution. It's like the cheetah and the gazelle. They are locked in a kind of a evolutionary race. The cheetah runs fast and the gazelle runs faster. Why? Because otherwise it will be food for the. So it has developed speed. That's the way to escape it. So both are locked in an evolutionary race. And this is what we find, that these senses, in order to apprehend this external world, for what? For surviving in this external world. We have to know the threats, we have to know the friendly faces and the friendly things around, and that which are dangerous, so that we can survive. The whole genetic system is meant for survival and propagation, self propagation, nothing else. It's not designed for seeking higher realities. What is that higher reality? And that's the reason why you have to transcend the senses to understand the higher realities. So here we are. These senses are now locked with this environment in a kind of a race, evolutionary race. People who live in Tibet, okay, they can live with very less oxygen because their genetic system, of course, they say that's a kind of a remnant of an ancient hominid called Denisovans that help them to acclimatize in those higher altitudes, cold altitudes, where we are used to kind of sea level living, we find it difficult. So the bodies have adapted to the environment, the senses have adapted to the environment, obviously. So what he's saying, the Rishi is saying, that each sense has developed its own area of kind of speciality in order to understand this world outside. So that's why he's saying, having known the dissimilarity of the senses that originate separately from Akash, from space, we have something called sound. And then sound, what's ear? And then air. And then air, what is it? Touch, skin. And then we have fire. Fire, what's that? Light, visual sense that to helps us to see light. And then we have water, and water, taste, tongue, the sense of taste. And then what? We have smell. Smell what? Earth. Hmm. And so every element has given rise to a particular sense organ. See? And Swami Vivekananda says, if we would have had another sense organ, we would have seen the world differently. Or if you would have these senses even more finer tuned, like dogs they have. Their sense of smell is unbelievable. They apprehend the world through the senses, to the smell. Suppose we had a magnetic sense, Swami Vivekananda said, we would have seen the world differently. Now, so according to the elements pre-existing outside, as they have been evolving over what has happened is we have developed a sensory system. That's a wonderful, you can say, work of evolution. Nature is kind of helping us, and we are helping nature in a way. Well, so this is having known the dissimilarity of the senses that originate separately from their distinctive, you can say, elements. So then you'll say, what about the periodic table with so many elements? Oh, there's so many elements, it's nothing but a few more electrons here surrounding this kind of nucleus. And that makes a different kind of element. The basic material is the same. So what happens? There are two elements, two electron and four electron and six electron, and they become different material. They are not different materials at the heart of it. So it appears as different. Steel will appear different, like as I can say carbon, and carbon is different from hydrogen, helium, all these kind of things. It's just matter in different configurations. These five principal elements in different configurations. So these sensors also configure appropriately in order for us to understand. And also their rising and setting. What do you mean rising and setting of the senses? Well, when we go to sleep, they set and they rise when we wake up. And we are studying, and then after some time, oh, your eyes are aching, and your brain starts becoming dull. And what happened? Your senses are now getting, you can say, tired. So the level of, you can say, activity is not the same. There is a rise and there's a fall, the rise and fall. Uh, what happens is, if we have something of interest, suddenly the senses become hyper. And something which is not kind of interesting, lackluster things around us, the senses also become kind of slow and dull. So there's always a rise and fall. That's what he's saying. First, the senses are different from the self, and the senses are locked with the external world. They are part of the same material. If they weren't, we would not have been able to apprehend it. We will not be able to grasp it. Food. What is food? Food is separate from you, but once you eat something, it becomes part of you. So your external nature and this nature of the body, they have their similar cause. If they were dissimilar, you would not be able to eat anything. That banana that you ate would have become a kind of a poison. So the body and the external world is perfectly kind of synced. And this external world gives rise to these senses. The senses are becoming more and more fine-tuned, fine-tuned. So there are people who are visually impaired. Their sense of, you can say, hearing has become so acute, so it goes to compensate. It just that shows how the senses wants to understand the nature. Of course, there is something called blind sight also, but let's not go into that. So here, once you understand, okay, then the Upanishads, they have given rise to the Vedanta philosophy. The very word philosophy itself is kind of a misnomer. Love for wisdom, philosophy. What's that? We don't do it. In India, in the old days, it wasn't philosophy. Those guys who started this, right, philosophy, but it's actually darshan, to see, to experience, to realize. This is the meaning of darshan, that Vedanta darshan. And it's translated as philosophy. There's no love for it. So these things are being taught to you, the principles as well as the practices. In will go in understanding this reality, comprehend this reality. So this next verse is giving us now a kind of a structured way of approaching that reality. The spiritual practice as well as the result of that practice. What is the result of the practice? That reality. The reality will be apprehended. So the seventh verse is 2, 3, 7. The seventh and the eighth verse are generally taken together. So we'll take it together. We'll read. Right? The mind is superior to the organs. The intellect is superior to the mind. Mahat, the great soul, is superior to the intellect. The unmanifested is superior to the Mahat, the great soul. But superior to the unmanifested is the Purusha, who is pervasive and is indeed without worldly attributes, knowing whom a person becomes freed and attains immortality. Here it is. These are the levels of existence. We thought, oh, this is the level of existence that we are in. That's not a level. That's only on the sensory level. And we have to start ascending. The reverse process of evolution is being shown. There is always an evolution and there is always an involution. Something completes the circuit. You need to complete. You cannot say something has emerged from the center, and then what happens? So what happens? It dissipates everything. So what is the purpose of this whole and creation? Where does it come from? Where does it go? Well, it comes from point A and goes back to point A, not to point B. So the beginning and the end of everything is that. So by showing a kind of a reverse evolution, that's called involution. From here, you go inside and more inside, even inside, and you arrive at that point from where the whole universe had emerged. So, how do we do with it? So, we had seen the sense organs along with the organs of action as well as the pranas, they are made of the same material of as nature. Higher than that is the mind. Okay. Now, when we are trying to meditate, what happens is like, no, we are trying to shut out the external world. We are trying to shut out these senses. That's the whole point of meditation. Shut it up. And the next thing you do is try to forget your own existence, your individual, your own ego. That is the higher level of meditation, where you forget yet you are meditating. Your meditation is going on smoothly, but I am meditating, then you disturb your meditation. So as we are meditating, what happens is we are trying to shut the senses, the visual apparatus and everything. Why? Because we want to go inside. And as we go inside, what happens is we encounter the impressions of those senses. What I had seen, what I had heard, and what I had touched, and what I had everything. What I had smelled, and where I had gone, and what I had eaten. All those impressions are there in what? In the mind. So that's why they say your real world is actually in the mind. We live, halfway between the body is stands like a kind of a it's like a halfway existence between the external world and the internal world. And the internal world is also made up of sights and touch and taste and smells and all your previous experiences. So obviously, the senses are here, they are apprehending the object, but higher than that is the mind. Because if there was no entity to kind of harmonize every impression that comes in, then you will create a big problem for yourself. I seen this, but I don't remember where. Don't remember where. So it is located within time and space and within this place. Got this? And the other senses also correspond. Yeah, I had gone there and I seen that and then I heard that. So all it's called like, there are a lot of there is a term synesthesia or synesthesia, whatever, that all the senses kind of interact with each other. So there are some people who hear music and see color. Okay. Somebody might utter a word and that person might again hear a sound or see color. There are these the kind of the senses also are in a unique kind of environment where they all harmonized. Okay. So higher than the senses is the mind. The mind is superior to the organs, sense organs. And as we have seen, the sense organs are superior to the motor organs, and the motor organs, we have are like, this, yeah, they are superior to the prana. So we have this sensory systems and the motor systems and the prana. So we have the levels of, you can of existence here in the body, and then we go higher up. We go higher in the sense what? The commentator Shankaracharya says Sukshma, and then he's saying Mahattara, and he's saying more internal or more all pervasive. What is subtle is more internal and more all pervasive. This is the first principle of it. How do you know this thing is superior to the senses, the mind? Because it is internal, it is subtle, and it is all pervasive. What is gross is limited, is defined. It has kind of a border, strict borders. The mind does not have those borders. That's why, where's the mind? Where's the mind? We think, and this is a problem where people are trying to understand the mind through the brain because they want to see something that's limited. You can define it and we can study it, but that's a gross thing. That can never be the mind. The mind, yeah, is more subtle, more internal, and more all pervasive. Sukshmatara, Mahatta, and then we say Pratyagatma Bhuta. More internal, more internal. Why? We could have gone outside. See, you must understand the first principle of Vedanta is the microcosm is a reflection of the macrocosm. If you can understand this, you have understood the universe, macrocosm. If you have understood your senses correctly, you've understood the external world. If you understood the mind, you've understood the higher level of existence. So you don't need to go out there and take with your trowel and your hammer and your also kind of break things, analyze things, put us chemicals and take them under microscope. You don't have to. You have to get inside here. That's what the rishis of old did. The rishis of today's world also. So the mind is superior to the organs. The intellect is superior to the mind. There it is. So the intellect is more finer. Now, when they say the intellect is superior to the mind, it's even more grosser than the mind are the memories. Okay. So the mind is superior to the memories, and the intellect is superior to the mind also. Now, what is this intellect? Since it is more subtle, more internal, and more all pervasive. Okay. These three principles are there. What is subtle is more internal, and what is more internal is more all pervasive. So you have senses, the mind, and the intellect, and the interim. You can say, stages also. That is kind of understood. Yeah. Where are we? Superior to the mind. Okay. The intellect is superior to the mind. Mahat, the great soul, is superior to the intellect. Wow. Now you see what happens every time you say, where is God? Where is God? God is in some heaven there, sitting down, is looking at you. In Vedanta philosophy, that is kind of completely dismissed as immature. God as reality has to be a part of you. You have to be a part of that reality. Otherwise, it makes no sense at all. What kind of philosophy is that? So, from the level of, so we have here the senses. If you look at these are this external world. This is the senses, and higher than senses is the mind. Higher than the mind is the intellect. Okay, and now it goes straight to the comprehensive reality, the great soul. What is that great soul? That great soul goes by various names. One of the names is Hiranyagarbha, the totality of all souls is that Hiranyagarbha. What souls? Yeah, that's a great soul. We are all included in the Hiranyagarbha. Now, where is Hiranyagarbha? Well, you want to search where it is. Go inside, go deeper and deeper and deeper. You'll come down to what is more internal, what is more pervasive, what is more subtle. You come down to Hiranyagarbha. So, straight from the individual, it goes to the universal. This is Vedanta. Got this? It does not say, oh, you're a soul, you'll be staying forever and ever, amen, alone, separate. Oh, that's not feasible, that's not advisable, and that's a blunder of philosophy. So the individual has to be understood in reference to the universal. Otherwise, what is individual life then? If we are not related, and on all levels of existence, we find that yes, we are part of this gross world. We think we are separate here, but we are part, we embedded in this gross universe. As an aspect of life, we are part of that greater life in this universe. And as an aspect of mind, we are part of that greater aspect of mind. So here, and this is what I liked about this modern, you can say, thought. It is showing there's a unity in variety. There's variety, but there's a unity. No person can say ever say that I am separate, I'm made of a special stuff. Then you can't be in this universe. You have to go somewhere, in some other creation. Sorry, no place for you here. So on all levels, the individual is part of the universal. Gross matter, vital force of prana, the mind, the intellect also. Now, intellect is not the same thing as intelligence. Okay, this is that individuality within us that says and they can understand, comprehend the lower levels of existence. How do we know this is part of the whole, part of me also? By a higher aspect of myself. So the intellect is there that can understand this. And above the intellect, what is there? Then straight the Upanishad jumps to the universal soul, the great soul. Well, what is the universal soul? We all are part of that universal soul. You, me, everything in this universe, everything that has ever existed will ever exist a part of that great soul. It is the totality of all names and forms and actions. It is the totality of all minds. It is the totality of all experiences, the totality of everything. In the Bhagavad Gita, we have with hands and feet and eyes and ears everywhere. Sarvata pani padam tat sarvata shishru. Sarvata shrutima loke sarvam avrityati. Those are kind of wonderful verses. So directly from so where do we go to search ourselves? Well, you go deeper, 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 and you find layers and layers of your own existence, which are subtle, more internal, more all-pervasive, till we come down to I am the universal. There it is. And so they'll say, now what's above this great soul, this universal soul called Hiranyagarbha? Yes, there is another aspect. What? So this is called the Mahat, the great soul, is superior to the intellect. The unmanifested is superior to the Mahat. There is an unmanifested level of existence above the great soul. So the great soul is the totality of all names and forms and actions and everything. But where has it emerged from? It is called the unmanifested. Why is it called unmanifested? If that was unmanifested, then this also would have been unmanifested. It is called unmanifested because it is the seed of all names and forms and actions and everything. In other words, this universe has emerged from that level of existence which cannot be perceived, which cannot be understood by the ordinary senses or the mind also. That's the reason why. So what is that? It is called Maya. It is called avyakta, not manifest. Avyakrita, like again, not manifest. Maya. Who rules that? Well, there's something called Ishvara. Ishvara is the seed of this whole universe. And from Ishvara comes Hiranyagarbha. From Hiranyagarbha comes all the intellects, and from the intellects has come all. So it's a kind of a reverse process. No? Go down deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, deeper. They're coming down there. So then what? After this Avyakrita or Maya, or the very seed of the universe from where everything begun. So we talk about the Big Bang. Right? There was no actually Big Bang. Kind of, but it has caught up on everything. Like there was a Big Bang. Big Bang means explosion, sound and light and heat. There was no sound and light and heat. Somehow it got caught up. But now, astrophysicists and astronomers are trying, oh God, this is kind of become so current. There was some quantum fluctuation and space expanded. It's still expanding. And as it expanded, it evolved, matter evolved. That space gave rise to all matter. There was no matter. There was something called the densest part, the whole universe was, as it were, condensed into a fine point, a quantum point. And then there was a fluctuation in that, and everything emerged. Well, does it look and sound silly? Yeah, it doesn't look. This thing has come from that point. Looks silly, no? But it can be mathematically proved. So this also is proved through experience. Higher and higher and higher, the very seed of the universe. So then, yes, what's higher than that? Here it is. But superior to the unmanifested is the Purusha. Here it is. Purusha, Purnamiti, that which pervades everything, is called the Purusha. That which pervades everything, which is Purna, which is the whole, which is complete. Superior to the unmanifested is a Purusha who is pervasive and is indeed without worldly attributes. All these kind of senses and mind and all these things are not there in that. Because we've seen that these senses are dissimilar to the self. We started with that. The senses are similar to what is in the external world. This is the grossest aspect of creation. And as it were, it goes on tapering higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. It goes to that point called the Purusha. But when I say tapering, don't again, don't make it a point. It's like it's kind of a reverse taper. Okay, it's like that is all pervasive here, and then it becomes less pervasive and less pervasive and less pervasive till we come down to the grossest universe is like a kind of a dense point here. So the universal becomes the individual, apparently, of course. Okay, and yam gnatva. So you're saying knowing whom a person becomes freed and attains immortality, knowing which yam gnatva muchyate jantur is a creature. Yam, that through which the creature knows this, knows this what? This knowledge, one who attains this knowledge, that person attains immortality. That becomes freed, muchyate, becomes freed and becomes immortal, attains immortality. So the process of attaining immortality and freedom, moksha, is given. So we creation started with this evolution. Evolution of what? That seed. What's that seed? So if we see that we have consciousness on this level, the seed also was consciousness. But we see we have consciousness and we have material objects also. Yeah. So that seed also must have been, had to have been consciousness and things like the nature in its pristine form before it evolved into this. So the commentator says, the Tikakar also, that Tikakar in the Anandagiri, the one who wrote the class, say when you see the seed, and then from the seed has emerged a tree, those two things are not different, they're not separate. The tree is a manifestation of that seed. So where does the tree come from? From the seed. Are they separate? No, not separate. They're the same thing. So different states of, you can say, evolution. So from that seed, if we see consciousness and matter here in the external world, the senses and the mind are the mixture of consciousness and matter, material, the five great elements: space, air, fire, water, and earth. Okay, in the rudimentary forms there. So we have this mixture here, means that thing was there in the beginning. So that's why God, Ishvara, is the creator. How does he create? True consciousness and matter. Where does the matter come from? Well, that's a long story. Where does the matter? It doesn't matter now. So it is that Ishvara is the seed of this universe. And that universe emerges as a tree. We can't have God separate from what we experience. That is what is Vedanta. You should not. You can't. What do we experience? Actually, you experience God. What? Yeah. But on the grossest level, and that's why you're deluded with it. As you keep on growing higher and higher and more mature and more internal, more subtle, you will get down to that. So, Vyapako linga, linga is chinna, the word a linga. When you see something, when you see smoke, in California we have smoke on those hills. There's a fire out there. It's obvious. It's a concomitant. It has to be. So you see a tail of a rattlesnake, emerging out of a kind of a hole. There's a rattlesnake there. How do you know? Yeah, see that tail out there? Everything in this universe has a kind of indicatory mark. Everything. You can see this and you can presume that this is what it is. Its origin. You see this universe, this is a kind of indicatory mark. This is the smoke. There has to be fire. Search for the fire. Where's the fire? There, get inside, get inside, get inside. But what about that fire? Does it possess a kind of indicatory mark? No. That's why I say alinga. Everything in this universe is an indicator of what? Of that superior consciousness. But that consciousness is not an indicator of anything. So you can realize God through any path, through anything. You can realize God through music, you can realize God through knowledge, you can realize God through anything. And we have hundreds and hundreds of stories. Devotion to a particular duty, even in the Karma Yoga, Swamiji said, that guy was a butcher and he attained the highest level of realization through devotion to his work. That's, and it has to be. Oh, you see, it is only through yoga can you realize. No, sorry, please keep your exclusiveness outside. This is Vedanta. You can realize God. You remember yesterday? You can realize God through anything. Then there's the story of a lady who did her duties at home, a housewife, and she realized the highest. How? She wasn't a yogi. She never studied Vedanta. She never needed to. You can realize God through anything you do. Why? Well, that anything you can do means because you can understand music, that's an indicator. Indicator of what? Of that supreme self. And I can approach God through that. So this is that comprehensiveness. It's here. Get it? So the Sanskrit, it's a very beautiful cancer. Indriyebhya param mano manasa sattvam Satvadadi Mahanatma Mahato Vyaktamuttamam Avyakta Parapurusho Vyapako Linga Evacha Yam Jnatva Muchyate Jantu Amritatvam sagachati. Gachati, prapnoti, attains. You see, since this is such an important, you can say, methodology, this has been repeated 2 times. It first appears, this is the second time. It first appears, I think you have this in the second chapter. I think it's mentioned here. The second chapter, sorry, the first chapter, third, 1, 3, 9, and 10. 10 and 11. 1, 3, 10, and 11. The same scheme that's been given. 1, 3, 10, and 11. The same scheme has been given. Only in that is the buddhi. Here it is sattva. Sattva means the commentator says buddhi. So 2 times it appears how one has to realize that all pervasiveness. When you say we want to realize God, people say we want to realize God, you better first realize yourself as part of the whole. If you can't do that, you cannot realize God. God is not some kind of an entity, separate entity somewhere in a corner of that. In that corner of that temple there, God is sitting there. What is he doing? Not sitting, he's fallen asleep. That won't do in Vedanta. First, you have to feel you're part of the whole. And this is where all the ethics come in. Yeah. And Vedanta ethics is so high. It's the first thing you better be unselfish. You're selfish. Selfish. You're angry, you get annoyed, you criticize. You drop all those things off. The moment you start dropping it off, you start getting connected. You're bonding with everything and everybody. And once you've got this, then you can rise higher and higher and higher. Internal movement. Okay. We'll stop here for today. Uh, we are coming very close to the end of this Upanishad. And as we are discussing, we might, there we are kind of discussing whether we'll take up some book on meditations. So we can go through different aspects of meditative practices. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu. Yes, to this evening there is a gospel reading at 7:30. Uh, this thing will read. Tomorrow we have the Bhagavad Gita at 7:30 also.
Wonderful, son.
Oh,
I've heard things I haven't heard before.